Joshua, could you maybe walk us a little bit through how you go through your grant proposals and distinguish the gems from the rest of the field? A little bit about how you think philanthropy's role may or may not be changing in terms of early stage biotech funding as we move into the future. Whether or not you're seeing any trends in philanthropy or ultra high net worth giving that would be worth us knowing that could be indicative of some hot spots.
Sure. The second question you asked is by far the easiest. Philanthropy today is significantly more important than it has ever been before. And it's not just in healthcare. It's really in all facets of life. It is inspiring, frankly, to see rooms like this put together where a major topic of discussion is philanthropy, because I think in many rooms and in many conversations it's left out, in the investment conversation. But what many folks and frankly many investors don't realize is that their investable product once started with a philanthropic effort. And so you have to build the foundations in order to then get to the point where you can commercialize. But going back to the first part of your question and how we really operate as an organization, I think it's always important for me to contextualize to audiences what we mean by longevity. I think it's no secret that unfortunately longevity at the moment, given its relative burgeoning nature, is a field that's rife with misinformation, a lot of hype that's quite fragmented from reality, and many bad actors, in addition to the good ones. But for us, longevity is not a question of radical life extension. It's not a question of immortality. It's a question of how do we increase the quality of life, how do we, like Max said, offer more years to life, not just life to years, or rather the other way around. And so the way that we try to analyze this is by funding research that really fit into three main categories. The first is geroscience. It's in our name, longevity, right? The fundamental biology of aging. How do we age? Why do we age? Why do men and women age differently, right? And at different rates, and why do certain populations of people age differently? It's an analysis of how we can either slow, stop, or reverse aging, either in the systems level or in the whole body level. The second vertical, which is really important to us, is chronic and age-related disease prevention research. Diseases that wind up impacting us more significantly in our aging populations. Diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, heart disease, right? Major killers. How do we shift the focus away from solely treatment, which is the sick care model, which we currently operate in, not only domestically, but abroad, into a true healthcare model? How do we stop the damage of these diseases before it begins? And it's not just physical, it's emotional and spiritual, and it's not limited to the individual that's inflicted by it. It's in their families, and their friends, and their care providers. And the third vertical, which is really important to us, is underrepresented populations in healthcare. Our biggest focus at the moment of which being women. And so when we think about our grant proposals process, everything starts there. How does it fit into one of those three key verticals? And then it's really all about due diligence. I think what's interesting about philanthropy is that for us it's really similar to the model of venture capital, but folks tend to think about them in such different ways, and it's fascinating. We have a due diligence process where we take in letters of intent, we then take in full applications, we review those for far too long and frustrate researchers all along the way. And then we have a scientific advisory board ultimately guide the decision-making process of where to allocate capital. That grant process is so crucial because the role of an organization like ours is to guide philanthropic dollars to having the most impact in an area where impact needs to be made. It's very difficult, we talk about this all the time, right, for whether it be a family office or an ultra high net worth individual or someone that wants to contribute $100 to go out into the vast world of research and find which project, in which corner of the world, in which lab, from which team, from which idea is actually going to have the most impact for you. And you need specialists in order to really understand and comb through that data. And so that's what we do. That's all our process is. We are here to help catalyze and accelerate really high quality research, but we pick the areas where we focus based on where is the largest unmet need in terms of capital and spending, and that is, from our perspective, certainly prevention and care broadly speaking, but also fitting into those three verticals as well. To double click on the question of why sort of philanthropy is important and why it's important now. When you look at the United States, just as an example. It's been mentioned multiple times already today, but we're the only developed nation where lifespan is decreasing. I think everyone would hopefully agree that that's going in the wrong direction. We are also one of the only developed nations where our health spans, which is another sort of longevity industry term, is also decreasing. But what's not talked about quite as frequently is that it's decreasing at a quicker rate. And so that gap that already exists between your lifespan and your health span is widening. And so what happens not only to health, but social services, the burden of care, right, and all of these things when that gap widens, that's a role that only philanthropy can play to really fit in when you've got more constrictive funding environments from the governmental level like we do right now. And that's cyclical. It's happened before, it'll certainly happen again. But philanthropy can take risks. Philanthropy is about impact. I forget the exact quote, but another panelist mentioned it earlier. It's mission-driven capital. And so you're not chasing ROI in a financial sense. You know, of course, you get the tax benefits and all those other sorts of things, which I'm sure everyone is happy about, but you get the impact of helping save lives. And venture is certainly not ready to step in at a stage where technologies have not been de-risked appropriately, nor is anyone else more mature in the investment cycle. Academia won't do it. And when governments don't do it, you're really only left with one more entity, and that is philanthropists. And so thinking about how that mission-driven capital has time and time again made tremendous differences and impacts in the space of healthcare should really lead and guide us into the future in thinking about how we can address some of the pressing challenges that we're faced with today that, quite frankly, folks are tired of talking about. My last point, and I'll hop off the soapbox, is I don't have a scientific training. I'm not a doctor. I am a commercial finance specialist. But both of my parents were diagnosed with cancer. And there is no greater sort of thankfulness that I could have other than saying both of my parents are still alive today. Simultaneously, traditional healthcare failed them tremendously. And they're only alive because of researchers who stepped in, who they had access to. And this is something that Patricia mentioned, but you begin to ask yourself, why don't others have access to this? You know, is it geographic? Is it financial? You know, you can make a list, it's all of the above, right? But philanthropy has the opportunity to provide that access. And when we're talking about access, we're really talking about hope. And so that's why philanthropy is tremendously important.